Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Astro Weather. I am Robert Phoenix, at least in this incarnation. And you are you in this incarnation as well. And we get to do it together. An interesting morning for sure. We had a shooting yesterday, as many of you might be aware of, in of all places, Kansas City, where they were celebrating the Super Bowl victory over the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm going to get into a lot of that on 15 Minutes of Flame. There is a link in the show notes for that show. It's there. If one of the mods are in the house and they want to stick that link inside chat, please do that. And I will get into that event a lot more deeply than I will here on the Astro Weather. And here's what I'm going to say about the event: Mars Pluto conjunction, Mars Pluto conjunction, true node conjunct Chiron in Aries. That I will talk about on today's weather because those are astrological aspects that really pertain to where things are going. And so the whole idea here, right, is to give you a heads up, like what's coming, where's the storm front headed in our direction. And so that's going to be part of today's discussion, as well as some other aspects that we, of course, cover here on Astro Weather. Thank you for being here. And thank you for supporting the show by liking and hitting that like button and subscribing and hitting the bell so you're notified. I do my best to pre-program the show the night before so that when you wake up, you get that notification and it's right there, right? Do my best to maintain my Virgo credibility and maintain a semblance of organization and order. So yeah, if you do that, you get the notification. What else was I going to say? Oh, right. Just a quick update. When you guys leave comments in the show, like with the show on the show page, I don't always respond. Sometimes I do. Just depends on where my head is at and how much I've got going on. But I do read all the comments. And I want to thank everybody for the feedback. And even if the feedback is what I would call critical feedback. So one of the things that was mentioned, this is one of the best shows on YouTube, except for the microphone. Now, as many of you know, I went through a moving process, and I'm still trying to sort through where a lot of my equipment is. Now, that said, I actually decided that I was going to redo how I do the show so that I can incorporate a boom mic. Now, I couldn't incorporate a boom mic with how this thing is set up, so I had to purchase a table that could accompany the boom mic, right? So clamp it on there. So by Sunday night, we're gonna bust out the new boom mic. We're gonna bust out kind of the beginning of the new setup. Behind me will be similar. We get a little of the green screen magic. But I also have another space inside the studio here that I do want to build out that is more of a, how would I describe it, material background, like things behind me that look a certain way. Why is my green screen? My green screen is weird. I don't know why. Let me just see here. Need the virtual background. Oh yeah, I have a green screen. Yeah, see, it's better now. I don't know why that was like that. Anyway, just some notes. That's all. Just a few notes. All right, why don't we get into the weather? Oh boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. So there we go. Let's zoom in on this a little bit. I don't think we've really seen anything yet. I mean, we've seen a lot, right? There's that Mars Pluto conjunction, and it was right on time for yesterday. The other thing, this somebody asked me about the True Node Chiron conjunction, and I was trying to be positive, right? Like this is one of the things that as an astrologer or somebody who's an interpreter of symbols and trends, and I'm here to right bring you into the feedback loop. And there are times when I may be feeling positive or I may be feeling somewhat optimistic, and I may look at something and interpret it in a way that could resonate with, oh wow, okay, this fits, this works. Not that I'm bending the rules of the interpretation at all, but I'm looking at, okay, well, where's the higher octave of this expression? Because in astrology, we have kind of low octave, middle octave, and high octave. And for the most part, we're kind of somewhere between middle and high with some of the transits and aspects, right? Every now and then we'll get sucked into the undertow and we'll hit those low notes. And, we get to learn a lot about ourselves when we hit the low notes in our lives. Like, oh boy, maybe I have a different way of coming at this, right? Let me see if I can take it up a few levels. So what I'm referring to is the True Node conjunction with Chiron. And somebody asked me about it on Twitter 2 nights ago. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, shit, we're starting to get into this space where Chiron is eventually going to hit 20 degrees, which is the Chiron return for the United States. And Chiron in the US chart is in the 4th house. And the True Node would emphasize, right, this chironic crisis around what? Guns, violence, things that are martial in their effect, right? And I knew that. But, and I was thinking, okay, well, how do we interpret this in a way that isn't just so, fatalistic and dogmatic that we're going to have to deal with it? Because that's where my head was at, right? And so I thought, well, the True Node in Aries is about self-expression, the activation of will, and at the same time, Chiron there brings a I wouldn't use the word humility, but it brings with it a sense of caution is not quite the right word, but it brings with it a sense of moving forward with awareness, right? Or what did I come up with? It was sort of like uh, it's okay in this instance, right, with the True Node in Aries, and Aries doesn't apologize, but it's okay in some ways with this Chiron aspect to be apologetic or to find a way to not have to win, right? Like find a way to not have to win. Even that doesn't mean you have to lose, by the way. Find a way that you don't have to win. And I kind of, so of course I'm going to take my own advice. And I kind of got into this with somebody on Twitter, and it has to do with, and by the way, the guy that I'm referring to, ultimately, Bill Belichick is an Aries. So it had to do with, of course, Travis Kelce, who we are going to talk about in a big way on 15 Minutes of Flame. Travis Kelce, in the middle of the game at the end of the first half, ran up to his coach, Andy Reid, and basically shoved him and yelled at him to put him in the game, to keep him in the game, because he was on the sideline for a certain play. They wanted to have somebody. Travis Kelce is not a great blocker. He's a great receiver, not a great blocker. They needed somebody to come in and block. Football's a team sport, right? So this was a big point of contention on the internet and sports internet, and so there's 2 camps, right? One camp is Travis Kelce is an apex predator, and he's on a team of apex predators. and Andy Reid is a fossil. And so when it comes to the apex predator, he's going to assert his will over the old man because he makes more money. He's younger. He's more important by doing the thing on the field that Andy Reid, with his headset tells him what to do, right? So there were these people who said, well, of course he's going to do that. So well, they wouldn't do it to Bill. Like, as one guy said, well, Tom Brady was really competitive, and Tom Brady went off on coaches. Tom Brady never went off on Bill Belichick. Okay, I'm just telling you that. And I would use that. I said, would Tom Brady do this to Bill Belichick in the middle of a game? Crickets. And so this one guy came in and he kept bringing some stuff up about Tom Brady, and he brought up the quote from Tom Brady about being competitive, and he had a clip of him with his assistant coach. I kept telling him, I said, it's not Bill Belichick. All right, he's not going to do it to Bill Belichick. Nobody would do it to Bill Belichick. And then, you know what I did? I said, okay, look, okay, you win. And I had a little laugh out loud where, I'm done, right? Like, I'm just done. And he came back again with something. So the reason I'm saying this is like, okay, I don't have to win this internet debate. I just don't. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my time or my effort. And so the whole idea is, look, it's okay. You can win. I don't feel like my ego is so involved in this that I have to fucking win this debate. So the whole idea was, okay, give somebody some space to save face. That's what I was talking about with this true node Chiron conjunction. And he comes back again. I'm like, okay, now I got to bury you. All right, I got to bury you. And then, and I did, but that's where I was coming from with this true node Chiron conjunction, right? It's like, understand, your perspective, understand your position, understand your stance, know it, right? Know it and just express it. Be it, right? That's what Aries is. Be it. Chiron says, okay, well, maybe you don't really have to, go to the mat and find a way to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Empowered is such a weak ass word. Find a way to own your position, right? Find a way to own your position, and then leave a little room in case you have to like get out of that position and allow the other person to save face. Right? This is what I was coming at with, it's okay to be both directed and with Chiron, self-aware that you don't have to bury the other person, right? That's where I was coming from. And this whole idea of saving face, right? And this is something in this culture we know nothing about. And if we just understood the concept of saving face a little bit more, our culture would be so much better off. And I've talked about this a lot, right? In the area that you really want, the area that you really need to save face is in relationships. It's in relationships. So not everybody's perfect in relationship. We got the South Node over there in Libra. And if you're in a relationship with somebody and they've done something patently wrong or something, slightly egregious, what can you do? Well, you can pounce on them, you can scold them, you can do any number of things. And if you know that you theoretically have the quote unquote upper hand or the correct position, you can create a scenario where that person can save face. It's not out of weakness, right? It is not out of weakness. What you do is you don't create any additional conflict or antagonistic energy so that you get stuck in it, trip in it, and the next thing you know, you're in a heavy duty conflict inside of your relationship. And this is one of the things that is, I think, really a lost art, a really lost art. There's a fine line between saving face and enabling. And people have to understand what that is. You just have to know where that line is. We've lost it. Now everybody has to win. Everybody has to win. And it's winning now with Chiron there. It's like, well, there's a cost or there's a price to pay. And again, I'm going to get into this with my thing on the Chiefs with the 15 Minutes of Flame. Again, link in the show notes. So we're still here, right? We're still here. And now we see this event in Kansas City with guns. And oh man, the anti-gun crowd is, they're on the loose. They're on the loose. I'll just give you a little bit of a tease for 15 minutes. What was it? 2 days after the Super Bowl, so the day before the shooting, Travis Kelce came out with a statement about guns and violence in America. Put a pin on that. So this is where we are now. Now, we have this sextile with Mercury. And what's interesting about this sextile, and so I was on Twitter pretty late last night. I'm going through these threads, and man, the numbers are popping. 33, 13, 3. Like the symbolism is off the freaking hook, and it's going viral. It's going viral. And even the most stodgy, that's just a conspiracy theory, sportscasters are going to have to start staring some of this stuff in the face, right? There's this viral effect now. And the Kansas City Chiefs and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift will never be looked at in the same way again, ever. And that's the Mercury sextile to Chiron and the True Node. The word is out. The human switchboard is passing this information along like it is wildfire, okay? And to me, this is a really important development, a very important development, because we are in the Aquarian age, and we are combining efforts to slice and dice and deconstruct these events that are meant to grab our attention and then move us along like a flock of sheep. So from a larger level, from a global perspective, from a cultural perspective, here's what we got. This Mercury sextile, Chiron, and the True Node. And it's happening, right? It's happening. It's right there, 16 degrees. Bang. Right on the dot. Right on the dot. And when all of this happens, guess what we deal with? We'll deal with another distraction. Oh, don't look here, go look over there. What does it mean for you in your life? Okay, here comes the challenging part. You remember COVID? You remember how you tried to speak up about certain things and people were, I don't want to hear that. No, right? We're kind of there again. We're kind of back there. And whatever is going on in your life at this point in time, if you need to speak truth to power, right? What that old phrase, truth to power. It's a day where there's some risk involved, but at the same time, if you are clear-headed and you understand your facts and figures and logic, then the opening is there to say what you need to say. This is a very important day because we've got this 16th degree across the board here, right? And we get 6, that's 7, 7, 7. 777 for me is the number of God, right? That is the high, 666 is the number of the Antichrist, and 777 is the number of God. We talk about, the seventh heaven, and we could get into the symbology of seven. It's a very powerful number, right? So today is one of those days where what I would call sacred transmission is in the air. Sacred transmission is in the air. The ability to see things, connect dots, and have the courage to talk about it in a way that is what potentially very healing, right? What does Aries represent? It represents the head. When we talk about Mercury, what are we talking about? We're talking about the brain, especially in Aquarius. This is a day where you can get a brain boost. You can level up. Now there is a risk involved, right? We have these squares, Jupiter, the moon, and Uranus, right? So part of it is, well, if I speak up, do I threaten my ability to make money? If I speak up, do I threaten other people and their ability to feel safe, cozy, and warm? Or maybe my own ability to feel safe, cozy, and warm. If I speak up, is my information too radical? Or, is it going to be disruptive and disturbing? Because people, when they get on overload, what do they want to do? I want to pull the covers up. I want to pull the covers up and just go back to bed, right? And we are in a society that is rapidly headed towards maximum overload. Okay, so remember the key to all of this, because if we're going to bring the true node in, guess what we're going to do? We're going to bring the south node in as well. And Mercury is entwined with the south node. Remember the key to clear communication, contracts between two people, and the ability to set up a network of information in the moment with another is you need to ask the person if they want to hear what you have to say. Very important. Very, very important. When you say, you know what, I have some feedback for you. Would you like to hear it? Once they say yes, you have an agreement. This is important. Very important. How many times, and I'll raise my hand, how many times have you had something really powerful, insightful, important to say, and you just thought that person just absolutely needed to hear it without a shadow of a doubt? And they probably did. And you came in and you just said, it's like those old Westerns where you go through those doors, right? It's like whang. And you just start to lay it out. That person's not going to hear anything. All they're going to hear is, I'm going to get the fuck out of this conversation. How do I do it? Do I snap back? Do I shut down and nod my head? Do I walk out of the room? Right? This is one of those days. This is how you avoid the potential conflict. It's and with here, right? This truth. A lot of times we don't talk about this south node, in the weather, because it's just kind of hanging out there. Well, today we're talking about it. Today we are setting up a line of communication. A line of communication that says, hey, you want to hear some crazy shit? You want to see some crazy shit? You want to take a look at this? Right? If they go, okay, there you go. Right? There you go. And at that point, what do? Now you're challenging yourself. Right? Now you're challenging your ability to share your information, and the square, and it's kind of a wide square, Mercury separating, but share your information and figure out a way with Jupiter to make it more expansive, to find a way to take the conversation to another level, right? The Mercury square moon means that you have to come up against this threshold of not being maybe liked, or feeling as if you might hurt someone else's feelings, right? The moon is feelings, and everything here is accelerated. And this moon Uranus conjunction is explosive. I keep coming back to the word explosive. And in as much as we have this event in Kansas City, we got earthquakes going on. Like we have space explosions. Apparently, what are we talking about? We're talking about space attack with SpaceX somewhere up there. Like we are in weird times. We are in the Illuminati card game times. You just every day you flip a card and go, wow, look at this shit, right? So, and everything about Taurus wants to remain stable. stable and grounded and predictable. Nothing wrong with that, right? Now, if you're a parent, you better be stable and grounded and predictable because your kid needs that, right? Your kid needs that. What your kid doesn't need is somebody who's unstable and unpredictable and not grounded. Holy shit, right? But here, this is very disruptive, incredibly disruptive. And it's disruptive across the board, from the big screen and the big picture to elements in your own life. But it doesn't mean that it has to be so disruptive that your interactions are like, taking a howitzer to a gun match with a 22 or something like that, right? Like, it's challenging your own habits, your own patterns, your own kind of ways of going about doing things, right? This is one of these days where you can break those patterns. And it's essential that you break the patterns, but it's essential that you break the patterns in a way where you can flow through it and not against it, because you're going to come up against it anyway. So you're going to need some energy, and you're going to need some, well, I'll use the word grace. You need some grace in your life to kind of go up against the energies today. And we have Venus at 28 Capricorn coming in. So there's that sextile with Neptune. So we have these outs. And the Venus-Neptune sextile is based on some kind of kindness, right? It is based on some kind of empathy and some kind of compassion. So we have inquiry with Mercury coming in here, right? Setting up, a line over to the true node in Libra, permission, agreement. And if you are engaged in an interpersonal activity with another person, start with a bed of empathy, right? Again, this is about, well, how do you communicate effectively? Well, we just talked about setting up a line of communication and agreement and contract. Well, with Venus Neptune sextile, you essentially put your body, your energy body, into the other person. How does this person feel? What does this person feel like right now? Let me kind of get in there. Oh, well, geez, this person might feel pretty fucking bad, right? Like, okay, is that going to stop me from being able to communicate and have a reasonable conversation, and while I'm breaking some taboos here, and kind of blowing up? I don't want to use the word blow up. It's, well, while I'm deconstructing pieces of reality. The two are not mutually exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. And just before you get into the interaction, just feel into that person. Now, you don't have to feel into that person and then say, oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't do this. Boy, they're having a really bad day. I'll come back tomorrow. Well, I guess you could. But, with the true node in Aries and Chiron in Aries, there's no time like the present. So the 2 points of strategy, right? Start with empathy. And you could even use language like, I imagine, and you can say, I imagine, because for some people, that's what they do. They mentally project into how other people feel. Not everybody can feel into how other people feel. I mean, if you could, that's a wonderful thing, right? That's where artists are born. They can feel into how other people feel, and they need to do something with the feeling. That's kind of one of the foundations of art. But it's also very challenging, especially if you're sensitive, right? Sensitive people can do that. Man, they have a real challenging time, negotiating and navigating how that goes. But it would not be unfair to say, I can only imagine how you feel. And and I have something I need to share with you. And I'll do my best to share it in a way that you may understand where I'm coming from. Boom, right? Most people just want to be recognized. Most people just want, and there are people who are starving for recognition. Why do you think we live in a selfie culture? Why do you think we live in a culture now where everybody thinks they have something so important to say? Because they're starving for recognition. And what does that mean? Ultimately, it means that the God within that person, right, or God within that person, we'll use God, not the God, God within that person is wanting recognition, right? And people, what will happen is that people will they will not understand that, and they will somehow translate that into an ego need. And so what we get is we get empty calories. And look, we're all capable of it. Fuck, I'm capable of it. Right? There are times when I get into like, Jesus Christ, am I ever going to get over 13,000 fucking views? Right? Like there's that part of me. It's like, I'd like to be recognized for, what I do. And and I have to back off. What are you really doing here? Right? What kind of service are you performing? And it happens. This is my process, right? And we all have a version of that. And it brings us into ground zero, which is okay. If I'm performing this to the best of my ability, then I am doing what I believe to be God's work or the divine dispensation of my daily duties, right? And if you're good with that, you're good with that. You don't need anything else. You don't need. So we're living in a world where people are starved for recognition. And that's why with this Venus Neptune sextile, you can say, hey, I can only imagine how you feel. Or, you've brought something up for me. And I just got to tell you, I can identify with what you're talking about and how you're feeling. And I have a perspective on this I'd like to share with you. Boom. Right. So this is one of those days where if you're in the clinches with that, those are the tools that you get to work with. Saturn is coming in now and has a nice sextile with Jupiter. So this is good. This is one of those hard work pays off sextiles. But what is the hard work here? The hard work, Saturn and Pisces, is you have to deal with, right, the highs and the lows of the Piscean experience. The lows of the Piscean experience for me is sort of the madness of crowds, right? Like hysteria. That's to me is like sort of the low of Pisces. When I think of an event like that, I think of Jonestown, right? I think of Jonestown, and I think of Jim Jones and this kind of messianic kind of figure, and a Christian religious cult, right? And what does it end in? It ends in death. However they got there, and there's a lot of various narratives with how they got there. To me, that's like sort of the low point of the madness of crowds. It's Piscean, and Saturn here is a reality check. It's a total reality check, which is good. I think it's good. Well, I'm not going to get caught up in this frenzy. Saturn brings kind of a stoic response to things. And I believe that in a world where all these things are popping, right? Saturn and Pisces, if you lay the foundation, if you understand, right, that your work in this world and what you're attempting to do is to have some degree of spiritual authority and agency. This is what Saturn and Pisces is about. And it is kind of an ascetic, right? Saturn and Virgo, Saturn and Pisces, right? The two poles of the spirit and the flesh. It's kind of ascetic, meaning that there is a bit of denial with Saturn and Pisces. And when I say denial, I'm not talking about you're denying about what's going on in your life or in the world. It's like, I don't need that, right? I don't need that third glass of wine, right? Maybe one, maybe two, but you don't really need the third. You don't really need the second or third helping of cake, because it's very easy now with all this going on to just numb or just, holy shit, I could use another drink. Saturn and Pisces says, Stay sober. Stay sober to the best of your ability. Stay present, right? Stay present. And it is in that presence and in that kind of conscious stoicism that guess what you get to do? You get to distribute your own spiritual authority and agency because you're not being controlled, right? By literally by spirits. Like that's what, the baseline level, that's what alcohol is. It's spirits. The word, they get the word gin from the word genie, right? Genie and gin are synonymous. Alcohol and alcohol are synonymous. And look where the part of fortune is, at least for here today in this part of the world. It's at 27 degrees Taurus, the bullseye, right on alcohol, right on alcohol. So again, the whole idea is the payoff. Stay clear. Stay clear, stay sober, don't waver, because when others are losing their heads, you will have yours together. And you will be able to show up and be able to exhibit clarity, demonstrate clarity. And even with Saturn coming in, it's kind of a wide sextile with Uranus. It's gonna be interesting because the Uranus is starting to pick up some speed here, but it's even able to incorporate new perspectives and kind of radical changes. This is an innovative sextile, right? Saturn and Uranus, when they're kind of in bed together, it's an innovative sextile. So you can find ways to I would use the word gradually, but structurally and logically, clearly innovate in your life. Hey, I'm getting a new microphone. I'm getting a new thing here so I can set it all up in my new place, right? This is what we're talking about. It does, you don't have to, build a Tesla coil in your house and charge people to come sit under it. Although maybe you want to do that. I mean, this is, Saturn's pragmatic, right? It's very pragmatic. I could get into more of this disruptive stuff. It's still in the air. Like when we get into like an event like yesterday, like look out. It's like it is. It's not done. It is not done. Pandora's box has been opened, but I gave you a few little tidbits for how to get through what we're going through. Don't forget the link to 15 minutes is over. It's in the show notes. Okay. Let's have a little True Hemp Science moment. Whoop, that's not what we want. We want that. There we go. To somebody use banners, hide that. There we go. All right. Let's do our True Hemp Science star of the day here. Of course, True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. And I think Chris may still have his sale going on. Love is water, all caps. If you want to get in on a discount on his new nano water emulsified powerful elixirs. This, he is on the cutting edge of creating these fantastic elixirs using CBD and blending them with other stuff. So if you need to go, if you want to ask him a question, go to truehempscience.com. You can make a little phone appointment. You just have to sign in. He'll answer all your questions. But there's this 15% off on the nano emulsified stuff. You can still try it. I think the sale might still be going on. 25% off on all four of the new nano emulsified products. And the code is Love is Water. If you just want to get the regular products for True Hemp Science, then then guess what you get? You get a goodie bag. You get a goodie bag with your order, and all you got to do is type in 15MINS. There you go. All right, let's talk about. Whoops, there it is. Our star of the day. Chris Farley. I always found it interesting that SNL had two large men on their cast who were insanely funny. And they both had insane appetites. Of course, the first one being John Belushi, and then the second one being Chris Farley. They both happen to be Aquarians. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, right? So these guys, these Aquarian men, you know, they're going to play by their own rules, right? That's how Aquarius rolls. Play by their own rules and unpredictable. Chris Farley is kind of one of those guys, right? He's a Leo rising, and he's a big personality, but it doesn't get as big here as it does on his midheaven with Jupiter. Right? He has Jupiter on his midheaven. So this is Jupiter's house, his house. So Jupiter is right at home there, maybe two at home there in a lot of ways. And he's a force of fucking nature. Right? When you have Jupiter, you know, we talked about Woody Hayes yesterday with Pluto on the midheaven and what an intense character he was. Chris Farley is a force of fucking nature. And I would assume that this would have been one fun dude to hang out with. Are you kidding me? Right? And I think it would be hard to kind of turn him off with Jupiter and Aries. And it's all about more, give me more, give me more, give me more. And, you know, we know the stories, you know, copious amounts of whatever he was putting in his body. Cocaine, just like Belushi, alcohol, food. Yeah, you know, he really looks like he could be Dan Blocker's son, by the way, the guy who was Haas on Bonanza, doesn't he? He's got a brother who looks just like him. But Jupiter is ruling the day in his chart, and he has this in conjunct with Neptune. And when you look at Neptune in the fourth house, what I would say here is that Chris Farley's upbringing probably had a lot to do with, and this is not a huge stretch, an alcoholic parent. When Neptune's in the fourth house, you're going to deal with things like alcoholism, addiction, lack of boundaries, or that's just the nature of Neptune in the fourth house. So that's what he's being, you know, those are his roots, right? Those are his psychic roots. It's Neptune. And of course, we talked about the higher octave, and the higher octave of Neptune would be, you know, something profoundly spiritual and peaceful, and everything is God, right? So there's that potential. But for a lot of people, it's very hard to get to that octave. And there's a lot of, you know, twists and turns along the way. You can say, well, I'll just go to the church and I'll just be a Christian and I'll do this. And then you get to run into that, you know, part of that story, which has its own kind of Neptunian traps, right? So we have this in conjunct with Jupiter. And I think, again, we talked about this idea of recognition earlier in the show, and what did I say? Right, like recognition is God wanting to be recognized in us, through us, and with others. And I think Farley has some of this. He has this thing that with this in conjunct, he's trying to get to, right? Like he's trying to get to it. And it's coming out in this really expansive, aggressive, and when I say aggressive, I'm not talking about him being aggressive, you know, over the top kind of way. It's like his approach to life is take no prisoners. And I think what's going on here is that here's a guy that's tapped in. Like he is tapped into life force. And he's tapped into, you know, being, you know, this kind of, he's an archetype, right? He's Jupiter. Chris Farley is Jupiter, and Jupiter's on his midheaven. And Jupiter is an archetype of God, right? Is big and expansive and generous. You know, that's kind of a version of that archetype. And I think that's what Chris Farley's trying to get to, right? It's almost like the expansive nature of the thing that he's trying to get to manifest, and him getting bigger and bigger and bigger and ballooning to the point where it's going to affect his health. He has addiction issues. That goes without saying. That brings in that Neptune square to Saturn, Sun, Mars, Saturn the father, Neptune in the fourth house, issues with the father, family secrets. Was Chris Farley violated? He's got Mars in the eighth house, but he's also a force. So this guy's a force. Sun Mars conjunction, eighth house. He's gonna work it out in a very dark kind of way. Right? This is somebody who I think is not immune to pain or suffering. Right? And this is what happens with funny people. One of the reasons why they're so funny is because they understand how fucked up things are. And it's their way to cope, and it's their gift to the world in a lot of ways. Chris Farley, I don't know a lot about his family life, but looking at his chart, there's some dark shit there. There's some dark stuff that he's trying to work out, right? And he's trying to make this shortcut with Neptune and Jupiter, and bypassing a lot of this. And this is the addiction stuff. Mars, Sun, Saturn. When you get into these Neptune squares, what have I talked about with Neptune squares? Addiction. And also, with this Sun Neptune square, probably doesn't feel all that great about who he is. Sun in the eighth house, he's hidden, right? And he's stirring up, these kind of, volcanic energies in the eighth house. And then we have these oppositions going on. What has he got? Chiron and Pluto. Wow. So he's kind of in that almost, was it 19? Yeah, he's getting close to that 66, 67 period with Saturn and Chiron, but not quite there yet. So this oppositional stuff, right? And this is all second house, Virgo, health. And over here, you get into stuff like obsession, addiction, the underworld, drugs. And this is, a real tug of war on this guy's body and soul. Right there. What's interesting is that he's got this true node in Cancer. And again, I don't know what his relationship was like with rehab, if there was any relationship at all, but if there was anyone who could have used a timeout every now and then and go to rehab, this is the dude. And working and overworking is not good for Chris Farley. Not good. Wasn't good for him. Every now and then he had to step off of the train and get himself to a place where he could literally recover. And again, I'm not sure if he ever did that or tried to do that. I'm sure people around him wanted him to do that. But when you get into these fixed squares, they're very, very hard to break through, right? It's like a lock when you get into fixed squares. Moon in Pisces, right? He's got this moon. Hold on a second. Yeah, moon in Pisces, right there, right at the end. So kind of a new moon. And people that have new moons want to fill their cup with experience. And so he has a lot of, we talked about empathy. He's got a lot of empathy. Chris Farley has a lot of empathy. There's a lot of compassion. And I think that's one of the reasons why people fell in love with him, because he didn't have to be a hero, right? He could be Tommy Boy. He could be a goofball, and it's that part of us that could relate to him, our imperfections, that made Chris Farley this big, lovable teddy bear of an everyman. And I think we get that with that Moon Neptune trine. And I also feel like that Moon Neptune trine, as it relates to addiction and spirits, also probably allowed him in some ways to, how do I say this? To incorporate I guess what I would call disembodied spirits in his own acting and in his own ability to take roles on. I think that there would be some of that with Chris Farley. And of course, continued use of drugs and alcohol would open that gate wide open for better or worse. But he was a cunning guy. He's a kind of a big, gentle giant, right? Mercury and Aquarius, super smart, really, really smart. And he was always at his best in tandem, like with buddy movies, like with David Spade, where he could play off another person. And Venus and Aries, I want it all now, right? That's Venus. I just want it all now. And he has this Mercury Venus sextile, very fast. He could talk to anybody. He'd be able to have a conversation with anybody. And, he'd be your friend quickly and then he'd leave. Not because he wanted to ditch you. He just had that ability to do that. What a great talent, huge spirit, and somebody who, he's etched in our memory, right? He's etched in our memory, and we have a record of him in the films and the TV shows that he's been a part of. So, Chris Farley, wherever you are, I hope you have found jocularity. I hope you found the great cosmic chuckle and relaxed into it. There you go. All right. That's it for today. Thanks for being here. Please join me if you like over on 15 Minutes, link inside of the show notes. Mods, thank you very much. This is Robert Phoenix, and this has been your Astro Weather. Bye for now.